Vela stood on the balcony of her home, staring at the twin moons of Titran. The sky was a dull gray, just like everything else on her planet. Her people, the Excitrans, were a proud race. They were advanced in technology and had ruled their corner of the galaxy for centuries. But to Vela, it all felt empty. On Citran, emotions were considered weaknesses. The Itrans believed logic and duty were the most important things in life. Love, compassion, those words didn't exist in their language. Vela had tried to fit in with her people, but she always felt different. She longed for something more, something her cold and calculating world could never offer. One day, Vela found herself in the Great Archives, a massive library filled with information about other planets and species. She spent hours there, reading about Earth, a small blue planet far from her home. The humans fascinated her. They were nothing like the Excitrans. Humans laughed, cried, and felt love deeply. They formed families and shared their lives with one another. They seemed so alive. Vela's heart, if it could be called that, ached with a strange feeling. She imagined what it would be like to live among humans, to be cared for, to feel warmth, to not be alone. That night, Vela made her decision. She would leave Titran and travel to Earth. But it wasn't just curiosity driving her. Vela wanted something more. She wanted to find a human husband. It was a strange and dangerous idea, but she couldn't shake it from her mind. A human partner, she thought, could fill the emptiness inside her. The next few months were spent in secret. Vela built a small spaceship using old parts she scavenged from abandoned warehouses. She couldn't let anyone know what she was doing. Leaving Citran without permission was considered treason, and the punishment was harsh. But Vela was willing to risk everything. As the ship neared completion, doubts crept into her mind. What if the humans rejected her? What if they were afraid of her appearance? Her blue, glowing skin and large, silver eyes were nothing like the humans she had read about. But every time she thought about giving up, she reminded herself of Earth's beauty and the hope it held for her. She had to try. Finally, the day came. Under the cover of darkness, Vela sneaked into the old launch site. Her heart raced as she climbed into the spaceship. The control panel lit up, and the engine hummed softly. She took one last look at her home through the small window. For a moment, she felt a pang of sadness. Citran was the only world she had ever known, but it had never felt like home. With a deep breath, Vela pressed the launch button. The spaceship roared to life, and within seconds, it shot into the sky. Alarms blared across the city as the Citran authorities detected the unauthorized launch. Red lights flashed on her console, warning her that patrol ships were closing in. Vela gripped the controls tightly. She had planned for this. Her ship was small and fast, built to evade the bulky patrol ships. She swerved through the dark skies, her glowing hands moving swiftly over the controls. The patrol ships fired beams of energy, but Vela's ship was too quick. After what felt like an eternity, she reached the edge of Citran's atmosphere. The patrol ships stopped their pursuit. Vela knew they couldn't follow her into deep space without risking their own safety. She was free, but the journey had just begun. As her ship entered the quiet vastness of space, Vela felt a mix of emotions. Relief, excitement, and fear all swirled within her. She had done it. She had escaped Citran, but now she faced the unknown. The journey to Earth was long and lonely. Vela spent her days reading more about humans. She practiced their languages and studied their customs. She wanted to be ready when she arrived. The more she learned, the more determined she became. She wasn't just going to Earth to escape her old life. She was going to find a new one. Finally, after weeks of travel, Earth came into view. The blue and green planet looked even more beautiful than she had imagined. Tears welled up in her silver eyes as she approached the atmosphere. She was so close to her dream. But as she prepared for landing, something went wrong. The ship's systems began to fail. Sparks flew from the control panel, and the engine sputtered. Vela frantically pressed buttons, trying to regain control. The ship shook violently as it entered Earth's atmosphere. With a deafening crash, the spaceship landed in a dense forest. Smoke and sparks filled the air as the ship came to a halt. Vela's hands trembled as she unbuckled her harness. She had made it to Earth, but at what cost? As she stepped out of the wreckage, the cool Earth air hit her face. She looked around at the towering trees and the soft glow of moonlight filtering through the leaves. It was nothing like Cytran. It was alive, vibrant, and full of possibilities. But before she could take it all in, she heard voices in the distance. Humans were approaching. Her heart raced. This was it, her first encounter with the species she had risked everything to find. Would they welcome her, or would they see her as a threat? Vela took a deep breath and waited, hidden among the shadows. Whatever happened next, she knew her journey had truly begun. Arrival on Earth. Vela crouched behind a cluster of thick bushes, her glowing skin dimmed to avoid detection. The voices grew louder, and soon the sound of footsteps crunching on leaves echoed through the quiet forest. Her heart, or whatever organ the Cytrans called their core, pounded in her chest. Through the foliage, she saw them. 3 humans, 2 men, and 1 woman. They were carrying small lights that cut through the darkness. The leader, a tall man with a confident stride, stopped and pointed towards the smoke rising from her crashed ship. "Look at that," he said, his voice filled with curiosity. "It must be a meteor or something." The woman, shorter with a sharp expression, shook her head. "That wasn't a meteor. Did you hear the sound? That was a controlled landing. Maybe it's military." The 3rd human, a younger man with kind eyes, squinted at the wreckage. "What if it's, aliens?" His voice was hesitant, almost as if he didn't want to sound foolish. Vela's silver eyes widened. He believed in aliens. Maybe this human, this man, could help her. But she hesitated. What if he was only curious and not kind? What if they all were dangerous? The woman laughed harshly. "Aliens. Jason, you've been watching too many movies." Jason shrugged, but his gaze stayed fixed on the ship. "I'm just saying, we should be careful. If it's not from Earth, we don't know what's inside." Vela's mind raced. Should she reveal herself? She had come to Earth to meet humans, but she hadn't expected it to happen so soon or under such risky circumstances. Her glowing skin could terrify them. Her large, silver eyes might make them see her as a threat. The group moved closer to the ship, their lights illuminating the twisted metal and shattered panels. Vela realized she couldn't stay hidden for long. If they found her ship first, they might think she was dangerous. She had to act. Taking a deep breath, Vela stood up. Her glowing blue figure emerged from the shadows, shimmering faintly in the moonlight. "Wait," she called out, her voice trembling but firm. The humans froze, their flashlights swinging towards her. For a moment, there was silence. The woman's mouth fell open, and the leader instinctively stepped back, reaching for something in his pocket. Jason, however, didn't move. His wide eyes locked onto Vela's, and his hand slowly lowered the flashlight. "You're real," he whispered. Vela nodded cautiously. "I am Vela," she said in a soft, deliberate tone. "I come in peace. I need your help." The leader, recovering from his shock, pointed a small device at her. "What are you? Are you armed? Are there more of you?" Vela raised her hands, palms out, a universal gesture of surrender. "I am alone. I mean no harm. My ship crashed, and I need your assistance." The woman stepped forward, narrowing her eyes. "Why should we trust you? How do we know this isn't some kind of invasion?" Jason interrupted, his voice steady. "She doesn't look like she's here to hurt us. Look at her. She's scared." He turned to Vela. "Is that true? You're not here to invade or attack us?" Vela shook her head. "I escaped my planet. I came to Earth because I believe your kind can understand me. I am searching for connection." The leader frowned, still wary. "Connection? What does that mean? Why Earth? Vela hesitated. Should she tell them the truth? That she was here to find a human husband? Would they think she was insane? But before she could answer, a distant sound broke the tense silence. A low, mechanical hum that sent a shiver down her spine. She turned her head sharply. The sound was unmistakable. Thytran patrol drones. Her people had tracked her to Earth. They're coming, Vela said urgently, her glowing eyes darting towards the sky. My people, they do not want me to leave. They will destroy everything to bring me back. The humans exchanged alarmed glances. Jason stepped closer to her, his voice calm but firm. We have to move. If you're telling the truth, we can't let them find you, or us. The leader hesitated, clearly torn between leaving and standing his ground. Finally, he nodded. Fine. We'll help you, but you'd better not be lying. Vela nodded, her relief tempered by fear. Thank you, she said softly. Jason gestured for her to follow. Come on, this way. We need to get away from the wreckage. As they moved through the forest, Vela couldn't help but glance at Jason. He had been the first to believe her, the first to see her as more than a threat. Maybe, just maybe, her mission wasn't impossible after all. Behind them, the low hum grew louder, and the first streaks of red light appeared in the night sky. The Extraterrestrial drones were close, and Vela knew her new allies were in danger because of her. Her journey on Earth had just begun, but already the stakes were higher than she had ever imagined. Would these humans truly help her, or would fear and danger drive them apart? Only time would tell. First contact. Jason led the group deeper into the forest, his flashlight casting shaky beams of light across the uneven ground. Vela followed closely behind, her glowing skin dimmed as much as she could manage. The leader, whose name she learned was Mark, stayed a few paces back, his hand resting on what Vela now understood was a weapon. The woman, Sarah, kept glancing at her with a mix of fear and suspicion. The distant hum of the Titran patrol drones grew louder, vibrating through the air like an ominous drumbeat. Vela's mind raced as she tried to calculate how much time they had before the drones located her. She didn't want to drag these humans into danger, but she had no choice now. If the drones captured her, they would take her back to Titran. Or worse, they might harm these humans to eliminate any witnesses. Jason stopped suddenly, turning to the group. We can't keep running like this. The forest will only slow us down. We need a plan. Sarah crossed her arms, her voice sharp. A plan? Against what? Alien drones? We don't even know what we're dealing with. Jason looked at Vela. Can they track you specifically, or are they just looking for the wreckage? They can track me, Vela admitted, her voice low. My people use advanced bioscanners. They will lock onto my life signature. She paused, looking at the humans with an expression that mixed guilt and desperation. I am sorry. I didn't mean to bring danger to you. Mark stepped forward, his tone harsh. Then maybe you should go back to them. Let them take you and leave us alone. No, Jason said firmly, stepping between Vela and Mark. We're not doing that. She came here for a reason, and she's asking for help. We can't just hand her over. Mark glared at Jason. And what happens when those drones find us? Do you think they'll just let us go? This isn't some movie, Jason. This is real life. Vela's voice broke the tense standoff. I will not let harm come to you, she said softly. If it comes to it, I will surrender myself. Jason shook his head. We're not giving up yet. There's a ranger station about a mile from here. We can hide there and figure out our next move. Mark groaned. Fine, but if those things catch up to us, I'm not risking my life for her. The group pressed on, the tension palpable. Jason stayed close to Vela, offering her quiet reassurance. Don't listen to him, he said. We'll figure this out. Vela glanced at him, her glowing silver eyes softening. Thank you, Jason. You are different from what I expected. Jason raised an eyebrow. Different how? Kind. Willing to help even when it puts you at risk, she said. Where I come from, such qualities are rare. Jason gave a small smile but didn't reply. They had reached a narrow stream, the cold water trickling softly over smooth stones. As they stepped carefully across, Vela suddenly stopped. Her head tilted slightly, and her glowing skin flickered brighter for a moment. "They are close," she whispered. Mark swore under his breath. "Great, just great. How close?" Vela turned her head toward the sky. "They will be here in minutes." Panic flickered across Sarah's face. "We're out of time. What do we do now?" Jason scanned the area quickly, his mind racing. His eyes landed on a large, hollowed-out tree nearby. "Vela, can you hide your glow completely?" he asked. "Yes, but only for a short time," she said. "Good. Hide inside that tree. We'll stay nearby and act like we're just hikers if the drones come." Mark rolled his eyes. "You really think they'll buy that?" Jason ignored him. "It's the best chance we have. Go, Vela." Without hesitation, Vela climbed into the hollow tree, her glowing skin fading until she blended into the shadows. Jason, Mark, and Sarah spread out, trying to look casual, though the fear on their faces was impossible to hide. Moments later, the first drone appeared. It hovered silently above the treetops, its sleek black surface reflecting the moonlight. A second and third drone joined it, scanning the forest with beams of red light. The humans froze as the beams passed dangerously close to them. Jason's heart pounded in his chest as one of the drones lowered, its scanner sweeping the ground just a few feet away. He clenched his fists, ready to intervene if it spotted Vela. But before it could detect her, a sharp, high-pitched sound echoed through the forest. The drone stopped and turned toward the noise, then shot off in its direction. Mark exhaled loudly. What the hell just happened? Vela emerged cautiously from the tree, her glow returning faintly. "They are chasing a false signal," she explained. "I sent a decoy using my biochip." Sarah stared at her, stunned. "You can do that. Why didn't you do it earlier?" "It is a risky move," Vela said. "The signal will not last long, and when they realize it is false, they will return." Jason nodded. "Then we don't have much time. Let's get to the ranger station before they come back." As they continued through the forest, Vela felt a strange warmth growing in her chest. These humans, despite their fear and doubts, were helping her. She didn't fully understand their world yet, but she was beginning to believe she had made the right choice in coming here. For the first time in her life, she felt a glimmer of hope. On the run, the forest grew darker as the group pressed on, the trees towering like silent sentinels over their desperate journey. The hum of the drones had faded, but Vela knew it wouldn't be long before they returned. Every step felt like a race against time. Jason led the way with steady determination, his flashlight scanning the uneven ground. Vela followed closely, her glowing skin dimmed to avoid detection. Behind her, Mark muttered complaints under his breath, while Sarah cast suspicious glances at Vela every few minutes. "How far is this ranger station?" Mark finally asked, his voice tense. "Another 15 minutes, maybe less if we keep moving," Jason replied without looking back. 15 minutes, Mark groaned. "We'll be sitting ducks if those drones come back." "Then stop complaining and move faster," Jason shot back, his tone sharper than before. Vela glanced at Jason, her silver eyes softening. He had been her strongest ally since the moment she revealed herself. His willingness to protect her, even at great personal risk, was unlike anything she had ever experienced. On Cytran, self-sacrifice was unheard of. Yet here was Jason, a human, doing exactly that. Suddenly, Sarah stopped in her tracks. "Wait," she said, her voice hushed. "Did you hear that?" The group froze. For a moment, there was only the sound of the wind rustling through the trees. Then, faintly, the hum of drones returned, louder and closer than before. "They're coming back," Vela whispered, her voice trembling. Mark's hand instinctively moved to his weapon. "Great. We're out of time. "What's the plan now, genius?" he asked Jason. Jason looked around quickly, his mind racing. They were in a denser part of the forest now, with thick underbrush and large boulders scattered across the ground. "We need to split up," he said finally. "It'll be harder for them to track all of us if we're not in one group." "That's a terrible idea," Mark snapped. "We should stay together." "No, Jason's right," Sarah said reluctantly. "If we stay in one place, they'll find us all. Splitting up gives us a better chance." Jason turned to Vela. "You go with me," he said firmly. "Mark and Sarah, head north toward the ranger station. We'll lead the drones in the opposite direction." Mark opened his mouth to argue but stopped when Sarah grabbed his arm. "Come on," she said. "Let's go." As Mark and Sarah disappeared into the shadows, Jason gestured for Vela to follow him. They moved quickly, weaving through the dense forest and over fallen logs. The hum of the drones grew louder, and red scanning beams lit up the trees around them. Vela's heart raced as she struggled to keep up with Jason's quick pace. "Why are you doing this?" she asked breathlessly as they ran. Jason glanced at her, his expression unreadable. "Because it's the right thing to do." Vela frowned. "Even if it puts your life in danger." Jason didn't answer immediately. Finally, he said, "I don't know what it's like where you're from, but here, some of us believe in helping others, even when it's hard. Besides," he hesitated, then added, "you're not as different from us as you think." Before Vela could respond, the ground beneath them suddenly gave way. Jason let out a startled cry as they tumbled down a steep slope, landing in a shallow ravine. Pain shot through Vela's leg as she hit the ground, but she pushed herself up quickly. "Are you okay?" she asked, crawling over to Jason. He groaned, sitting up and rubbing his shoulder. "I think so. Just a few bruises." He looked up at the slope they had fallen down. "We're not getting back up that way." The drone's hum grew deafening, and the red beams appeared at the edge of the ravine. Vela's glow flickered brighter as panic surged through her. "They're here." Jason grabbed her arm and pointed toward a narrow crevice in the rocky wall of the ravine. "There, we can hide." They scrambled into the crevice, squeezing into the tight space as the drones descended into the ravine. Vela pressed herself against the cold stone, her glowing skin dimming to almost nothing. Jason crouched beside her, his breathing shallow. The drones hovered just above the ground, their scanning beams sweeping methodically across the ravine. One beam passed dangerously close to their hiding spot, and Vela instinctively reached for Jason's hand. He didn't pull away. Instead, he gave her hand a reassuring squeeze. The drones lingered for what felt like an eternity before finally moving on, their hum fading as they ascended out of the ravine. Vela exhaled a shaky breath, her glow returning faintly. Jason peeked out of the crevice, then turned back to her. "They're gone. For now." Vela looked at him, her silver eyes filled with gratitude. "You saved me again." Jason shrugged, though his cheeks reddened slightly. "Just doing what I can. Come on, we need to keep moving." As they climbed out of the ravine and continued through the forest, Vela felt a strange sense of warmth despite the danger they were in. Jason's bravery and kindness were unlike anything she had ever encountered. For the first time, she began to believe that her mission, to find a human connection, might actually succeed. But deep down, she also knew that the drones wouldn't give up so easily. The true danger was still ahead. The bond grows. The forest began to thin as Jason and Vela emerged into a clearing. The moonlight bathed the grassy field in a soft glow, but the danger was far from over. Vela glanced behind them, half expecting the hum of drones to return at any moment. The night was quiet now, but silence had its own way of unsettling her. Jason paused, looking at the horizon. "We're close," he said, pointing toward a faint outline of a wooden structure nestled among the trees ahead. "That's the ranger station." Vela's glowing silver eyes focused on the structure. It looked so different from the sleek, metallic architecture of her home planet. This was simple, rough, and somehow comforting. Will it be safe there? She asked. It's the best shot we've got, Jason said. There's a radio inside. We can warn Mark and Sarah if the drones come their way. Maybe we can call for help too. Vela nodded, though uncertainty tugged at her. What kind of help could they call? Would Earth's authorities be any kinder to her than the Titrans? As they approached the station, Vela hesitated. Jason, she said softly, why are you helping me? Truly. Jason stopped and turned to face her. He seemed to search for the right words. Because you deserve a chance. You came here looking for something better, right? I don't know what you've been through, but I can see you're not a threat. You're just lost. The word lost hit Vela harder than she expected. It was true. She had fled her planet, her people, and everything she had ever known. But even here, on this beautiful blue world, she wasn't sure she belonged. I am more than lost, she admitted. On Citran, I was nothing. My people do not value feelings or connections. They see emotions as flaws. But I could not live like that. I thought Earth might be different, that humans might. She paused, her glowing skin dimming slightly. Understand me. Jason's expression softened. You've got more heart than most people I know, Vela. That's not nothing. And Earth isn't perfect, but there are people who will understand you. You've just got to find them. His words gave her a spark of hope, but it was quickly overshadowed by guilt. But I brought danger to you and your friends, she said, lowering her head. If the drones find us, they could hurt you because of me. Jason shook his head. That's not your fault. You didn't choose this. Besides, if I was in your shoes, I'd hope someone would do the same for me. Before Vela could respond, a faint rustling came from the trees. Jason's hand went to his flashlight, gripping it tightly as he scanned the darkness. Vela tensed, ready to dim or glow again if necessary. Relax, came a familiar voice. Mark and Sarah stepped into the clearing, both looking tired but unharmed. We circled back, Mark said. Figured we'd check if you two made it. Barely, Jason replied. The drones were close, but we lost them for now. Sarah looked at Vela, her sharp gaze softer than before. You led them away from us. That was brave. Vela tilted her head, surprised by the compliment. It was the only thing I could do. Well, it worked, Sarah said, glancing back at the trees. But we don't have much time. If those drones regroup, they'll find us here. Jason nodded. Let's get inside the station. We can figure out our next move there. The group hurried toward the ranger station. Inside, the wooden structure was sparse but functional. A desk with an old radio sat in one corner, while a small kitchenette and a few chairs filled the rest of the space. Jason went straight to the radio, fiddling with the dials. Do you think this will work? Sarah asked, leaning against the wall. It should, Jason replied. If we can get a signal out, we can warn other people nearby to avoid the area. As Jason worked, Vela wandered to the window. The forest outside was still and quiet, but she could feel the tension in the air. She turned back to the group, her voice hesitant. If the drones find us here, I will surrender myself. Jason froze, his hands hovering over the radio. No, you won't, he said firmly. We're not giving you up. Mark sighed. She's right, Jason. If she goes with them, maybe they'll leave Earth alone. Or maybe they'll kill her and come after us anyway. Jason shot back. We don't know what they're capable of. Vela stepped forward. Jason, I cannot let you risk your lives for me. You have already done so much. Jason turned to face her, his expression resolute. We're not giving up on you, Vela. You came here for a reason. You deserve a chance to live the life you want. For a moment, the room was silent. Then the radio crackled to life, interrupting the tension. Jason quickly adjusted the dial, and a faint voice came through. Anyone out there? Repeat, does anyone copy? Jason grabbed the microphone. This is Jason Blake. We're at the ranger station near Blackwood Forest. We need help. Over. The voice on the other end hesitated. Help? What kind of help? Jason exchanged a glance with Sarah and Mark. It's complicated, he said carefully. But we're in danger. Please send someone. The voice replied. Understood. Help is on the way. Jason set down the microphone, his expression a mix of relief and worry. Now we wait. Vela sat down in one of the chairs, her glowing skin dim and her silver eyes thoughtful. She didn't know what kind of help Jason had called for, but she couldn't shake the feeling that their troubles were far from over. The Excitron drones wouldn't stop, and neither would the danger. But as she looked at Jason, Sarah, and even Mark, she felt something she hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. These humans were willing to stand by her, even when the odds were against them. Maybe Earth truly was a place where she could belong. For the first time since leaving Citron, Vela allowed herself to believe that her mission might succeed. But deep down, she knew the hardest part was yet to come, the ultimate choice. The night dragged on in tense silence. Inside the ranger station, the group sat in a rough circle, each lost in their own thoughts. The only sound was the occasional static from the radio. Vela remained near the window, her silver eyes scanning the dark forest for any sign of movement. Jason broke the silence. We need a solid plan. Help is on the way. But if the drones show up first, we can't just sit here and hope for the best. Mark leaned back in his chair, arms crossed. What kind of plan? We've got no weapons, no way to fight back. We're sitting ducks. Vela turned away from the window. The drones will not stop until they capture me, she said softly. If they cannot, they will destroy everything in their path to ensure no trace of me is left. Your planet is in danger because of me. Jason shook his head. This isn't your fault. They're the ones bringing the fight here. Sarah looked at Vela, her expression serious. But she's right. As long as she's here, those drones will keep coming. Earth isn't safe. Jason frowned, his jaw tightening. What are you saying, Sarah? That we hand her over? No, Sarah replied quickly. I'm saying we need to figure out how to stop them permanently. Mark scoffed. Yeah, because that's totally doable against alien tech. Jason ignored him and turned to Vela. Is there any way to shut them down? Do they have a command center, or something we can target? Vela hesitated. The drones are controlled remotely from a mothership. If we can disrupt their signal, the drones will deactivate, but the technology to do that does not exist on Earth. Mark groaned. Great, so we're back to square one. Sarah tapped her fingers against the table, deep in thought. What about their tracking system? You said they're following your biosignature, right? Is there a way to mask it or send them somewhere else? Vela's eyes widened. A decoy, she said, her voice filled with sudden realization. I can use my biochip to create a false signal. If I amplify it, the drones will prioritize the decoy over me. Jason's eyes lit up. That could work. Where would we set it up? Vela looked at the map on the wall, her glowing fingers tracing the terrain. Here, she said, pointing to a deep canyon several miles away. The drones will follow the signal into the canyon. Once they are inside, we can destroy the entrance, trapping them. Mark raised an eyebrow. Destroy the entrance. With what? We don't exactly have explosives lying around. Jason nodded toward the supply closet. The ranger station has emergency flares and fuel. It's not much, but it might be enough to cause a landslide. Sarah stood up, her determination clear. It's risky, but it's the only chance we've got. Vela stepped forward, her expression serious. I will set up the decoy. It must be done manually, and I will need to stay close to ensure it works. No way, Jason said immediately. You're not going out there alone. I'll go with you. Vela shook her head. It is too dangerous. If the drones find us before the trap is ready, you could be harmed. And if something happens to you, the whole plan fails, Jason countered. You're not doing this alone. Mark sighed. Fine. I'll help with the flares and fuel. But if this goes south, Don't say I didn't warn you. Sarah glanced at Jason and Vela. We'll split up. Jason and Vela handle the decoy. Mark and I will set up the explosives at the canyon entrance. We meet back here when it's done. Jason looked at Vela. Are you ready for this? Vela's glowing skin flickered faintly, her silver eyes steady. I am ready. The group moved quickly, gathering the supplies and heading out into the forest. The air was heavy with tension as Jason and Vela navigated the terrain toward the canyon. Vela carried a small device in her hands, its glowing blue core pulsating softly. This decoy, Jason said as they walked. It won't hurt you, will it? It will not, Vela replied, though her voice held a hint of uncertainty. But it will drain my energy. I may not be able to glow. Jason glanced at her, concern flickering in his eyes. We'll get through this, he said. You've come too far to give up now. They reached the canyon's edge as the first faint hum of drones filled the air. Vela worked quickly, placing the decoy device on a flat rock and adjusting its settings. The device emitted a bright burst of light, its signal pulsing like a beacon. The drones will come here, Vela said. We must retreat to a safe distance. Jason grabbed her hand. Let's move. As they climbed higher up the canyon, the sound of the drones grew louder. Red beams cut through the night, scanning the decoy's location. The plan was working, but time was running out. Above them, Mark and Sarah had already positioned the flares and fuel. Sarah waved from the ledge. Hurry, they're almost in position. Jason and Vela reached the safety of the ridge just as the drones descended into the canyon. Vela's knees buckled, her glow flickering faintly. Jason caught her, his grip steady. You did it, he said, his voice filled with awe. Mark lit the first flare and tossed it into the canyon. The fuel ignited, and the ground shook as a cascade of rocks tumbled down, sealing the entrance. The drones, trapped inside, let out a final burst of light before falling silent. The group stared at the rubble, the realization sinking in. They had done it. Vela looked at Jason, her silver eyes filled with gratitude. You saved me. Again. Jason smiled. We saved each other. But as they began their journey back to the station, a new thought lingered in the back of Vela's mind. The drones were gone, but the mothership was still out there. The fight wasn't over yet. A new beginning. The dawn was breaking as the group returned to the ranger station, their exhaustion heavy but their spirits cautiously hopeful. The forest was eerily quiet now, the hum of the Titran drones gone. Vela, though visibly drained, walked with a newfound sense of purpose. For the first time, she felt like she wasn't alone. Inside the station, Mark slumped into a chair, letting out a long breath. I can't believe that worked, he said, shaking his head. We actually stopped them. Sarah set down her gear and leaned against the wall. For now, she said, her voice careful. But we all know this isn't over. If they sent drones, they'll send something worse when they realize what happened. Jason sat beside Vela, concern etched on his face. She's right. The mothership will come looking for you, Vela. And when it does, it won't just target you. It'll target everyone. Vela lowered her gaze, her glowing silver eyes dimmed from exhaustion. I have put your world in danger, she said quietly. I hope to find a place of peace here, but instead, I have brought conflict. Jason reached out, placing a hand on her shoulder. You didn't bring this conflict. They did. And we'll figure out a way to stop them. For good. Mark raised an eyebrow. Oh, we will, huh? And how exactly do you plan to take on an alien mothership with a few flares and a ranger station? Jason's jaw tightened, but before he could respond, Vela spoke up. There may be a way. All eyes turned to her. Vela took a deep breath, gathering her thoughts. The mothership relies on my planet's central command network for its power and communications. If I can access that network, I can disrupt their systems. But to do so, I would need to make contact with their ship. Mark threw up his hands. Great. So now you want us to waltz right into the middle of an alien warship? Sarah frowned, deep in thought. Wait, if you can disrupt their systems, wouldn't that give us a chance to send them a message? Maybe scare them off? Vela nodded slowly. Yes, if I can reach their command interface, I can send a false directive. I could make them believe Earth is no longer a viable target. Jason stood, his expression resolute. Then that's what we'll do. Mark groaned. Are you serious? You're talking about walking right into their trap. Jason turned to him, his voice firm. You saw what we just did. We beat the drones. We can do this too, but we can't let them keep coming after her, or us. Vela stood as well, though she swayed slightly from exhaustion. This is my fight, she said softly. I will not ask you to risk yourselves further, but I must end this. Jason stepped closer, his eyes locked on hers. We're not letting you do this alone. Not after everything we've been through. You came here looking for connection, right? Well, now you've got it. We're in this together. Mark sighed heavily, but there was a grudging respect in his tone. You're insane, Jason, but I guess I'm in. Sarah smirked. Looks like we're all insane, then. The group spent the rest of the morning preparing for their bold plan. Using the equipment from the ranger station and Vela's knowledge of Citron technology, they rigged a makeshift signal amplifier to lure the mothership to a remote location far from any populated areas. Vela worked tirelessly, despite her exhaustion, guiding the humans through the intricate process. As the sun set, the group stood together on a rocky plateau, their trap set and ready. The amplifier emitted a low hum, its signal pulsing like a heartbeat into the night sky. They'll come, Vela said, her voice steady. They won't ignore this signal. Jason glanced at her, his expression both serious and warm. Are you ready for this? Vela looked at him, a faint glow returning to her skin. I have never been more ready. When the mothership arrived, it was as massive and imposing as Vela had described. Its sleek metallic surface reflected the moonlight as it hovered above the plateau, casting an enormous shadow over the group. Red lights flickered along its hull, scanning the area. This is it, Jason said, gripping the makeshift remote they had built to detonate their backup explosives if needed. Stay close. Vela stepped forward, her voice calm but commanding. They will attempt to contact me. I must respond to gain access. Before anyone could argue, a beam of light shot down from the mothership, surrounding Vela. Her body tensed as the beam lifted her into the air, but she glanced back at Jason with a reassuring look. Jason clenched his fists. We stick to the plan. Inside the mothership, Vela's glowing presence caused a stir among the Citron command crew. They questioned her actions, her betrayal, but she remained focused. Using her knowledge of their systems, she connected to the central command interface. Her hands moved swiftly across the glowing controls, sending the false directive. Outside, the group watched nervously as the mothership's lights flickered and dimmed. A low, rumbling sound echoed through the air as the ship began to retreat. She did it, Sarah whispered, her voice filled with awe. Moments later, the beam of light returned Vela to the ground. She stumbled slightly, but Jason was there to catch her. It's done, she said softly. They believe Earth is no longer a threat. They will leave your world. Jason grinned. You did it, Vela. As the mothership disappeared into the night sky, Vela looked around at the humans who had risked everything to help her. For the first time, she felt a true sense of belonging. Thank you, she said, her voice filled with emotion. I came here searching for connection. I found something far greater. Jason smiled at her. Welcome to Earth, Vela. You're one of us now. The group stood together under the stars, their bond forged through danger and trust. Though the battle was over, Vela knew her journey on Earth was just beginning. But this time, she wouldn't face it alone.